She's served in leading multi-state organizations, advancing patient-centered care and empowering providers to work at the top of their license.
And he said, I need to see you after class. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm in trouble. And I wasn't in trouble, obviously.
So I'm curious if you might share with us,
Mhm.
are there some somatic or intuitive practices that you tend to lean on now in order to stay anchored in the authenticity that you so love?
I know several of the organizations I worked in, I had a number of great ideas that others supported to enhance revenue, to utilize people to the top of their license.
Yeah, that's so interesting when you talk about you tolerated it because you wanted to get the promotions, you wanted to move up and get the recognition
And so I think we have to normalize being an authentic leader. We have to normalize saying, I'm at my capacity.
Welcome to the Healing You Method. I'm Gloria Lybecker with my co-host Gail Donohue, and today I'm so excited to introduce everybody to Meg Johnson Hall. She's a healthcare leader and speaker and an authenticity coach. She has extensive experience in nursing, healthcare administration, and quality improvement. She's served in leading multi-state organizations, advancing patient-centered care and empowering providers to work at the top of their license. So drawing from her own journey from a traumatic childhood to living authentically, Meg now helps individuals and organizations recognize their true value and to design systems for greater impact and create meaningful, fulfilling lives. So, Meg, we're so honored to have you with us today because you bring a rare blend of wisdom and lived experience and authentic leadership. So, before we dive in, just want to check in with you. How are you arriving today?
Well, first of all, thank you both for having me on this podcast. I am so appreciative. I am doing great today. I just celebrated my birthday and my anniversary, so it's a great week. Yeah, and I'm enjoying, getting some messages out there. I'm starting some classes in the fall, so I'm working on that. And yeah, it's a really good day.
Wonderful.
wonderful. Well, just to start off here, Meg, with learning more about you because you've walked such an extraordinary path from your traumatized childhood and into being a trusted leader and coach. So I was wondering, could you share with us a pivotal moment in your journey when something shifted inside of you?
I think there was two major pivotal moments for me. One was I was in college and I was studying nursing and psychology. And I was in this psychology class where we actually did kind of role play therapy. And the professor was just an incredible teacher. And during that, I didn't think what I experienced was unusual. So I just shared kind of an example of that, and he was just stunned of, what I'd experienced in my childhood. And he said, I need to see you after class. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm in trouble. And I wasn't in trouble, obviously. Um, but he said, what was that you shared? And I shared with him a little bit about what my childhood was like. And he said, you need help. And he said, no one, especially at your age, could have recovered from all that you experienced. And he said, so you need to go to counseling now. And
Oh,
I was
wow.
kind of going through my rebellious period after, escaping my childhood home. And I really did need counseling. So that was a one pivotal moment. The other one, I was in my early 40s and I was working in hospice care. And one of my hospice patients was actually a gentleman that a physician that I had worked with. He was my medical director previously, a few years previously. And he was suffering with ALS. And after we'd worked together a few weeks, he said, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you've lost the light. You used to have a light in your eyes. And he said, you no longer have that. He said, so what's ever going on in your life, you need to deal with it. And that was just like the wake up call that I needed. Uh,
Wow. Wow. it sounds like those two experiences like helped you to and I'm wondering if you could
Yeah.
say if this would be aligned with what you just shared, but helped you to get in touch with your heart. The last one, it sounds like, but and then the first one being so pivotal of getting the support that you needed to recover and heal.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think you're right on target there. I think the first one really helped me get some support so that I could function
Mm,
as a productive human being and become a nurse. The second one was really the true wake-up call that I needed because I was not living healthy. I was not sleeping much. I was in a toxic marriage. So it was the wake-up call that I needed that, it was just a year or two later that my doctor told me if I didn't change my ways, that I would be dead in 5 to 7 years.
wow.
So, my former medical director slash hospice patient was right on target. I was just
Wow.
kind of shriveling away. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that
How
was really both what I needed.
Yeah, how wonderful to have had someone like that to
Yeah.
have helped you pivot
Yes.
and shift. And it sounds like really help you know your heart and get aligned
Yeah.
there with your heart.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think really figure out who I was. Coming out of high school, everything I had done, every move I made, every word I said, every was orchestrated by my family. And
Mm,
so I, had to figure out who was I? What did I believe in? What are my values? I had no
Mm,
idea. So I
yeah.
kind of did an initial round of that, and then it just continued. And I would say in my 40s is when I really took that deep step into finding my authentic self and living that authentic life.
wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then you could really, what I'm hearing, a sense of difference between, I don't know, leading on that autopilot pathway
Mhm,
that you'd been imprinted with into actually leading more consciously and leading from your heart, from your core self.
mhm. Very,
Yeah.
very true. Yeah. I initially, those first 15, 20 years, I led based on what people told me to do.
Yeah. I
Because
think
I'd
we
been
all did.
programmed to do that. Yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah.
everybody else's expectations, what they told me to do, I did. Um,
Got really good at it too, huh?
yeah, it did. I was a master at
Mm.
that. And
Yeah.
I could pretty much meet everybody's expectation. And then all of a sudden, when I became authentic, it was like, oh no, no, no. I'm
Mm.
gonna lead, um, consistent with my values and my beliefs now that I know exactly what they are.
Yeah. So I'm curious if you might share with us,
Mhm.
are there some somatic or intuitive practices that you tend to lean on now in order to stay anchored in the authenticity that you so love?
I do. So part of it is my writing. I do a lot of writing. Got a couple things coming out and another one in the works. The other thing is I do meditation.
Yeah.
I'm a healing touch practitioner, and I think that really helps me to, which is energy healing for anyone who doesn't know. It really helps me to stay grounded, stay aligned with my purpose and my values. And then I do a lot of time in nature, which again, there's nothing there to influence you. You just really are yourself and enjoying what's around you and experiencing and being truly present. That's something I had to learn.
Yeah. Well, I want to just maybe pause right there for a moment because to me that's just I really resonate with nature and it's a different kind of influence, if you will.
Hmm.
It's a harmony. It meets you right where you are and it actually reflects back to you who you really are,
Hmm. Very true.
and so it really it welcomes you as you
Hmm.
are.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
accepts you just as you are. There's
Yeah.
no judgment in nature.
Yeah.
You walk in and you're just part of it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Being part of the wholeness.
exactly.
Huh.
And yeah, it's interesting as you're talking about it, I'm thinking that, and with nature, anything in nature becomes what it is,
Hmm.
authentically what it is. It can't change.
Right. Yeah. Nobody tells the bunnies or the birds what they have to do and how they have to
Yeah.
behave. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you need to be in, a walnut tree instead of a fir tree or something
Yeah.
like
Yeah, exactly.
that. Yeah. So you've worked in world-class systems, the Mayo Clinic and another county that you've worked in, and so if we were to reimagine healthcare from like a truly human-centered soul aware place.
Mhm.
Um, what would be one shift you'd start with?
So the biggest thing I think I would change is the concept that a lot of healthcare leadership organizations and healthcare organizations in general have is that if you're a practitioner, whether you're a physician, a nurse, a respiratory therapist, whatever, you can't be an effective leader because you have that heart for the patient and you're
Mm,
patient-centered. And so they tend to move towards financial people to be leaders in the organization. And to me, that's very incongruent. When you're designing care, leading practitioners, really, you need to have that heart-centered focus. And when I was working at Mayo, one of the jobs that I got was because I was a nurse and I also had my master's in healthcare administration. And the physicians in that organization thought that was a really good match because I understood the clinical aspect, I understood the patient care aspect, but I also understood the business aspect. And so I would like to see more organizations mix in a good mix of healthcare practitioners with
Hmm.
education in healthcare administration or business administration.
that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank
It
you.
does.
Another question, excuse me, that we have would be, how do we actually better support those who are caring for others? You talked about how you were caring for this physician and he actually cared about you and
Mm.
you had a pivotal moment. But when you're in an environment that really normalizes burnout, how could we better support people who are in the caretaking profession?
Yeah, I think we need to go beyond Pizza Fridays and your access to EAP because there's actually some judgment there when you go to EAP if people find out. And we need to look at how can we design healthcare systems more efficient versus just pushing people to work more and more and more. I know in many organizations I've experienced where they just eliminate a number of leadership jobs and then they add on five more jobs basically to that person. And number one, it burns them out. Number two, they can't do it effectively. We can only spread ourselves so thin. And so I
Yeah.
think we need to be more conscious about, how we're doing cost cutting or revenue enhancement. I know several of the organizations I worked in, I had a number of great ideas that others supported to enhance revenue, to utilize people to the top of their license. And it was really, not well accepted. It was more, we're going to cut. And
Mm.
I think and the other piece is we tolerate it. I did for many years. I burnt out a couple times when I was working in healthcare leadership. I tolerated. I wanted to be promoted. I wanted to be recognized. So I would tolerate getting more and more responsibility. So there needs to be really a complete mind shift related to that.
Yeah, that's so interesting when you talk about you tolerated it because you
Right.
wanted to get the promotions, you wanted
Right.
to move up and get the recognition
Hmm.
probably it was tied to, oh, if I can get there, I can do
Hmm.
more.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's probably some of it's tied to what you said about being more heart-centered in
Hmm.
the leadership roles. But so what do you see in terms of other other people like amongst us all with trying to make a shift in the system to recognize this? Because I feel sort of that same kind of pull that, oh, you want the promotion.
Right.
It's kind
Right.
of the either or.
Right. Right. You either do all of this and live to these, expectations and orders and all that, or you just sit there, and never move. And so I think we have to normalize being an authentic leader. We have to
Mm,
normalize saying, I'm at my capacity. And the other piece that I'm trying to do is to influence leaders to become more authentic leaders and not just go with the demands of the COO or CAO, whoever it is, and really understand that they will lead much better if they lead in alignment with their values. I remember one job I had been leading with alignment, and then I got a fourth boss in 4 years.
oh, wow.
And I'd done really well with the other three. This gentleman came in and I had negotiated a contract the year before to save us about $4 million, but it was over 4 years. Um, and so he came in and he said, well, you have to do the same thing for me. And I said, well, we don't buy equipment every year. That's a once every 5 to 10 year kind of thing. I said, I don't know that I can come up with $1 million a year for you. And he said, well, then you just cut staff. You just eliminate staff to get to it. And we were already tight. We weren't like way overstretched, but we were tight. People didn't have a lot of free time. And so I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. Um,
I love
so I
it.
didn't make any friends that way, but I said, if we're going to continue to provide quality care and keep our staff, we can't do that. That's just not the way to do it. I said, I will look for some alternative ways, but I guarantee you I'm not going to come up with $1 million.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
I had to really be my authentic self and take that risk of stepping up and saying, I'm sorry, that's not doable, at least to maintain quality.
Yeah.
yeah, so what I'm hearing is that's what it takes to truly live in alignment with your values, that to be authentic that way. And what you also did, I love you, it sounded like you did it with grace.
Hmm.
You're like very clear around
Hmm.
what your boundaries are and that you are presenting that very authentically, even to that person that's above you, so to speak.
Hmm.
So I wonder, wouldn't it be lovely? It's kind of a impossible dream guess, maybe, for you to be able to go in and work with the CEOs or those top
Hmm.
people, and for them to have that experience so that it can begin to trickle down.
Exactly, exactly, because that's the key is it really needs to start at the top.
Yeah.
I was able to lead pretty authentic work groups and units and clinics and all that. But there still was that element, if the person above me and the person above them were not living authentically and leading authentically, it made it much more difficult for me to do. So, yeah, getting that awareness, I think that we can be fiscally responsible and yet live to our values and provide quality care that is achievable. It may be a little easier to just cut, and do these, inauthentic moves, but it really is achievable. And long run, you're going to have better staff retention, you're going to have better engagement, better satisfaction, but it does take some pain to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and um, I, in my experience, it's a belief system that people think it's easier to take the shortcut.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and in the truth of the matter is though, when you're really honest about it, it's really not as advantageous because
No.
there's a lot more harm and a lot more pain that's caused.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, being in healthcare as long as 40 years, I've seen, all these ebbs and flows where we cut everybody and then all of a sudden we realize we can't provide care because we've cut too much. And then so we do this big hiring thing and then we
Yeah.
overhire. And it's just this, roller coaster that we spend our time
Yeah.
on. And to me, if we could just take the time to really get authentic, get grounded, really focus and create this culture of openness and acceptance where we take suggestions from others, because I'm never the smartest person in the room. um, if I have really good people working with me, I might appear that way because they're doing great things, and if they succeed, I succeed. And so I
Mhm.
think we don't always think about that in leadership.
Yeah. So, Meg, it's making me get interested in hearing a bit more about what you do when you're doing your coaching. And so I was curious about what's a question that you love to ask your clients when you're working with them, and
Mhm.
have you found something that really helps to open it up deeper for them?
I have, I do this exercise really the first or second time that we meet. It's usually the first time. Um, and it's really asking them to identify three core values of theirs. And I have a value sheet if they're not quite familiar with that. And some people don't even know what that means. So it's really interesting to do that. So we do this exercise where they really identify their three core values. And then I have a worksheet that I work with people over the next week. I ask them to take this worksheet and separate out what they do and which activities really match their three core values.
Mm.
And to me, when we get back together after that, that's a real eye opener for so many people to go, wait a minute, it was like 7% of my time last week I spent focused on my three values, or maybe it's 15, 20%. But and I'm not saying mine is 100%, it's not, but I try to keep it around 75% of my time is focused on my values, my core values. So that's usually the biggest aha moment for my clients is
Oh,
really saying, "Oh wait, I'm doing nothing but working. I'm not with my children, I'm not with my spouse, whatever it might be. I'm not, practicing my faith, whatever that is." And they just realize that many times, and especially, leaders, that they're spending 90% of their time working.
mm,
Working and sleeping seem to be their two biggest things. And even at their work, they're not always living to their values.
yeah, yeah. So related to that, what kind of exercise or questions do you do to help them perhaps have an aha moment to see the fear that perhaps is driving them or the inauthenticity that is driving them?
Yeah, we do. We also do some real good exercises around what decisions you're making and how those decisions are influenced. So that helps you kind of be aware of, am I just doing what other people tell me to do? Or
Mm,
am I reflecting? Am I understanding what I believe about this decision, whether it's like next year's budget? Am I really reflecting on what's best interest of the patients, what's best interest of my staff, what's best interest of the future of the organization, or am I just doing what I'm told to do, which is, whatever it is, create a new service line or cut people or whatever.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a pretty good awareness to really spend time going, okay, of my decisions, which ones are made in alignment with my core values and which ones are made based on other people's expectations and demands.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you do this work? Is it usually typically one-on-one, or do you also do group work from?
Yeah, so far I've done one-on-one, but this fall I'm launching two masterminds, one on authenticity and one on leadership. And it'll be authentic leadership, of course. Um, and we're going to do a 2-day program, 3 hours each day. And then after that program, then I'm launching a group coaching focused on that, along with continued education and some other things and one-on-one coaching. But I really am excited about having this sense of community because I think
Mhm.
it's so important to have support as you really make that transition to more authenticity.
Absolutely. You want to surround yourself with more authentic
Exactly.
people, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And people that are struggling just like you, it's like, oh, I have these expectations or I've created this persona in my life and now I need to make that switch in that persona and that's scary. It's not always easy. And so, having other people that are going through that and can say, oh, I just did this last week to align myself more with my values and share those successes as well as getting support when they're facing real challenges.
I
And
love that.
understand it's not, one week you're this and the next week you're living an authentic life. It's gradual. It's a process. I mean, it took me many, many years to do it. So, um,
Well, and honestly, it's so easy to slip back into our old
yep,
patterns if we're not conscientiously aware of them.
yep. And that's it. I can hold my clients accountable, but I think it's even better when their peers hold them accountable and say, "Oh, wait, you made that decision. Is that in a line?" And they can kind of just gently try to give them a chance to reflect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting how reflection is so important and but it's not something we're taught to do or
Right.
encouraged to do and especially as adults.
Well, and it's gotten even more so with all the technology.
Yeah.
There's days I look at myself and I'm like, you have spent no time meditating, no time reflecting. It's like all you've done is, go on this treadmill of checking my email, doing meetings, doing, sessions. And the next thing I know, and planning my social media posts, it's like, wait, where am I in that?
Yeah. So that's great segue into a question I'm curious about is like, what do you personally do when your life gets intense? Do you have rituals or practices or people? Like, how do you catch yourself? Is I guess because sometimes, yeah, we can just get on back on that treadmill again if we don't have other
Yeah,
people around us in that group setting that you were talking about that you want to create. I can see how important that is.
it is. So I block times out of my calendar. One for just going for a walk in nature. The other one is to do my meditation. And then I also watch myself. In the evenings is my time with my husband. And we just cook together, we spend time together. And if I find myself just living on my phone or my iPad, well, it's my time. He has permission to call me out and go, wait a minute, it's been an hour and you barely looked away from your phone and this is our time. So I think having people in your life that will kind of hold you to those standards, as well as I find I don't do it if I don't schedule it in. And if something comes up as a conflict, that's okay. I can reschedule it, but I make sure I make some time. I know when I was working in healthcare administration, I didn't even have lunch breaks, let alone time to just sit and meditate. So I would schedule in going for a walk because if I could get out of the building, did I seem to be able to relax and focus and, get back grounded.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so what does healing, what does that actually mean to you, both in your personal life but also in your professional life?
So for me, healing was a lot about giving myself permission to not be okay, giving myself permission to be angry, at some of the things that happened with my childhood, giving myself permission to understand that that was not normal. And I do need to heal. I do need to, recover from this. And then the next step became forgiveness.
Mm,
And for a long time, I pushed back against that because I thought I was basically giving permission or forgiving them for what they did, and it was taking them off the hook. And then I learned over time, no, that was not it. I was carrying this big burden on my shoulders, of everything that had happened to me and all my anger and all my fear and all of that was carrying. And so once I forgave and I forgave family members one at a time, um, there was just this lightening of this load that came off of me.
mm,
And so for me, a lot of it is journaling, a lot of it is talking, a lot of it is writing. In my writing, my book that I'm working on right now is actually about finding the gifts in growing up in a mentally ill and abusive home.
Mm.
And so that's been, just kind of another level of healing for me,
yeah,
to go through some of these experiences. I share some of the stories and then talk about my healing process to find those gifts.
yeah,
Yeah, an example of that would be my grandmother was bipolar with psychosis, and so it was always walking on eggshells in the house, always, because you never knew from one minute to the next what was going to happen. And my father was very angry, so similar with him. So I developed very early on this external radar to monitor and scan everybody and scan the environment, feel the energy. And that was one of the things I learned first when I went into counseling in college well, she said, you have this incredible radar to read people.
Mm.
She said, where do you think that came from? And I said, it came from living in a scary, unpredictable, home where even just dropping your shoes in a wrong place would set the world on fire.
yeah.
So yeah, it's been really good for me to really look at the gifts that I got and where they originated from, and then what they provide for me in my life now.
Mm.
So if you, looking back on this journey that you've had, if you could whisper like one truth to your younger version of yourself, what the one, that didn't get to know her
Mhm.
authenticity and know her own power, what would be that one truth that you would whisper?
I would say take the time to find yourself because she's okay.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then I'm wondering too, if you're willing to share, what's one truth that you are still learning how to embody?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I would say, so when I was growing up, if I ever sat down, even other than to eat or to go to bed, I was told I was lazy. And
Okay.
so I still struggle with that a little bit today. My husband will be like, can't you just sit down? Because I'll sit down on the couch and then I'll get up and I'll do some things and then I'll sit down again, watch a show or whatever we're doing. And then I have to get up again. So that one is still a struggle that I feel like I can't just relax and take time for me, other than my structured meditation and walks and things like that.
Yeah. I love that you noticed that. I have similar patterns myself.
Hmm.
My husband will say, slow down, Gloria.
Yeah. Good thing we've got these people in our lives that say, kind of bring that to our attention of just relax, just slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, Meg, for those listening today and feel inspired to explore more of your work, where can they find you?
So I have a website. It's www.firstqualityconsulting.com. And on there talks about my healthcare consulting as well as my authenticity and leadership coaching. Or they can reach out to me. It's just Meg at firstqualityconsulting.com.
Oh, great. And we'll probably put that in the
Yeah, that'd be
information that
great.
people can see.
The
Yeah.
other thing is I
No.
have actually I think this week or next week is coming out. I did a collaborative book and my chapter is on authenticity. And so that will be coming out. It's Cracking the Rich Code, Volume 18. It should be out next week.
Wow.
And so my chapter in there is really focused on authenticity if someone's interested in reading more about that. Um,
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Make sure you let us
yeah,
know when it gets released. That's exciting.
it is. It is.
So if you can leave our listeners with one last tidbit, what would it be?
Living and leading oh my goodness, I can't speak today. Authentically, there we go, is a somewhat long and at times difficult journey, but it is so worth it in the end. So take that first step.
Hmm.
Yeah, thank you. So before we close today, we want to share what's coming up next on the Healing You Method podcast.
Next week, we're diving into a big one, sacred boundaries, saying no from a regulated place.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll explore the deep roots of people pleasing and why setting a boundary can feel like danger in the body, even when the mind knows that it's the right thing.
Yeah, so true. And so we'll be talking about the difference between scripted boundaries and how it really feels in your body when it's coming authentically from you. And so it's not just coming, the no isn't coming from your head because you've read about what you should say and what you should do, but it's connected with the alignment with your heart and it just has this solidness of feeling right.
Yeah, we'll share a simple 30-second breath and posture practice that you'll be able to use anytime you need to say a clear no with grace and strength.
So if you've ever felt guilty after setting a limit or frozen when your no was trying to come up out, then this episode is for you.
So until then, invite you to be gentle with your nervous system, and your yes and your no both deserve to be sacred. Thank you.